Catfish are a very popular sport fish and eating fish across North America. Anglers target them year-round, and most anglers, when they clean them, are used to skinning them. But there's more than one way to skin a cat, and today we're going to fillet a catfish. Now, filleting a catfish is a tiny bit different than filleting other fish such as a walleye or a crappie. There's some odd little bones and turns in them, but we're going to go through a step-by-step and show you how to do it. So normally when I would clean, say, a walleye, I would start out by lifting the pectoral fin, making a slit underneath up to the top of the backbone. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start right at the top of the backbone, push the knife in and run it right down the backbone around the top of the ribs. Now when you get to the bone, or the top dorsal fin, there's a little bone you have to go around. It's almost like a little bump in its back. So you go around that and just run this knife down the backbone like you would any other fish. You get to about the start of the anal fin here, and you can see this is where the rib cage ends. So then you can just take your knife, stick it all the way through, and then you're just going to cut the fish, fillet it down the backbone like you would any other fish. So now what we're going to do, we got this part of it done, we're going to cut back up towards the ribs. And as we cut back up towards the ribs, we're just going to keep going around the top of the rib cage until we get so far down, and then we're just going to, the ribs in the middle are so thin there's hardly any meat around them, so we're just going to cut like that, and we've got a nice fillet here. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're taking the fish and we're poking it in. So here's the dorsal fin, here's the top of the head. We're going to put the knife in right here. We're going to run it down, and there's this, right in here, there's a little bone you got to go around the dorsal fin. Okay, I'm going to lay it on its side, and then again, I'm just going to run the knife down to about the end of the ribs, push through. You can see I push the knife through the other side, and then I'm just running it right down the backbone like you would any other fish for a nice clean fillet. Then we're going to run the knife back up towards the head, start to go around the rib cage like so, and then when we get halfway around the rib cage, we're just going to poke the knife through and cut the fillet off like so. So now we've got two catfish fillets right here. Now if you look at this fish here, you might think, why didn't he go all the way around the rib cage like you would on a walleye or a crappie, where there's a lot more meat around the ribs when you cut it off at the belly? Well, if you look here, there's just not really any meat here. The skin's basically attached to the ribs, so you're just kind of wasting your time trying to get around it. So by cutting it short like that, you're not wasting any meat. Now what I will say is if you're dealing with a much bigger fish like a 6, 8, 10-pound catfish, there obviously is more meat, and you can take your time going around the ribs and up closer to the pectoral fin. For these littler fish, there's not as much meat. You're not wasting meat if you're not going all the way around the rib cage. So now we've come to the fillets, and that's the other wrap on catfishes. They got what they call a mud line, or the dark red meat along the between the meat and the skin. And there's a couple ways you can do this. We're going to show. I'll show you one way each way. So the first thing I'm going to do is just fillet the meat off the skin like you would any other fish. You're going to cut down to the skin, and you have to be a little bit more careful because there's no scale, so the skin's a little can be more fragile. It can be cut through. So we're just going to cut it like we normally do a regular fish. We're going to cut it down to the skin, take the fillet off, go along like this. And if you look right here, this is what they, anglers will call the mud line or the red line, and it's just basically a strip of red muscle meat along the back of the fish. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to take this and we're going to cut it right down the middle like so, cut it in half, and then we got this little angle of this muscle meat. We're just going to cut it off like this. Get one little fillet, or one little piece of the fillet there. Cut this little chunk off too, and then do the same on the other side. Cut at an angle, cut this off, second one, and then there's just a little bit of dark meat on top, this fatty meat. We're just going to shave this off like this, and we've got us two nice little fillets of meat right there. So the second way you could do it, if you want to take your time, takes a little bit more muscle memory and of doing it a number of times, is you can take your knife, grab the back of the skin again, and instead of cutting down to the skin and going, you're going to stop and try to feather the knife above that fatty line. So right now I'm keeping the knife above, just leaving a little bit of meat and skin, meat on the skin when I'm filleting it. It's kind of, it takes a few times for doing it, but you just end up leaving a little bit more meat on the skin. But then when you're done, you can see, well, I left a little up here, but you can see in this section right here, like basically all that red meat is gone. So I just have to touch it up here a little bit. But that is another way you can do this to get that red line of meat off the fish. And the reason we're cutting this red meat off of there is this is the meat that's stronger and has more of a fishy taste. So if you want a cleaner tasting fillet, you want to remove this red line or the red muscle off of the meat and just get it down to the white muscles to get the fishier taste out of the fillet. All right, so the next time you're out catfishing and you're not dealing with really small cats, you're getting some mid-sized catfish, don't feel like you just have to skin them, take the head off and have a whole body chunk of a catfish. You can actually fillet these fish and get a nice white firm piece of meat to do fish fingers, fish fillets, throw them in the deep fryer, whatever you want.